canceled flight, one bed, and two broken hearts. What happened that stormy night changed everything they thought they knew about love. The rain was coming down like bullets on the small airport's metal roof. Lisa pressed her face against the cold window and watched the water run down in rivers. Her flight had been sitting on the runway for 2 hours now, and the pilot had just announced what everyone was dreading to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, due to severe weather conditions, all flights are canceled until further notice. A collective groan filled the small plane. Lisa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. This was supposed to be a simple business trip. Get in, present the marketing proposal to the client, get out. Now she was stuck in Pine Valley, a town so small it probably didn't even show up on most maps. The airport, if you could even call it that, was basically a one-room building with a coffee machine that looked older than her car. About 30 other passengers were milling around, all looking equally frustrated and confused. Some were already on their phones, desperately trying to find hotels or rental cars. Lisa grabbed her small suitcase and joined the crowd at the information desk. The woman behind the counter looked overwhelmed. Her name tag said Betty, and she had the expression of someone who had delivered bad news about 100 times that day. The nearest big hotel is 40 miles away, Betty was saying to the man in front of Lisa. But the roads are pretty dangerous right now with all this rain and wind, the man groaned. What about local places? Well, there's Mountain View Bed and Breakfast right here in town. It's walking distance, but they're almost full up because of all this. Lisa's heart sank. She really didn't want to spend the night in some tiny mountain town, but what choice did she have? When her turn came, she asked Betty about available rooms. You're in luck, honey, Betty said, though her expression suggested otherwise. They have one room left, but there's a small problem. What kind of problem? Betty looked uncomfortable. It's their honeymoon suite. It only has one bed, and there's already someone else who booked it too. The owner said you'd have to share or find somewhere else to stay. Lisa felt her stomach drop. Share a room with a complete stranger? The idea made her skin crawl. But looking outside at the storm that seemed to be getting worse by the minute, she realized she didn't have much choice. I'll take it, she said, hoping she wouldn't regret this decision. The bed and breakfast was a cozy little place that looked like something from a Christmas card. Under different circumstances, Lisa might have found it charming. The owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, met her at the front door. Oh good, you made it safely, Mrs. Patterson said warmly. Your roommate arrived about an hour ago. He seems like a nice young man. Very quiet, great, Lisa thought. A strange man. This just keeps getting better. Mrs. Patterson led her up a narrow staircase lined with old family photos. The whole place smelled like cinnamon and old wood. It was actually quite pleasant, but Lisa was too stressed to appreciate it. Here we are, Mrs. Patterson said, stopping at a door marked Rose Room. She knocked gently. Alex, your roommate is here. The door opened and Lisa found herself face to face with a tall man with dark hair and tired eyes. He was probably in his mid-30s wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt. He looked about as thrilled with this situation as she felt. Hi, he said simply. I guess we're sharing tonight, Lisa nodded. I guess we are. I'm Lisa. Alex. He stepped aside to let her in. I already put my stuff on the left side. Hope that's okay. The room was small but beautifully decorated with floral wallpaper and antique furniture, and right in the middle was one large bed with a fluffy white comforter. Lisa tried not to stare at it. This is definitely not what I planned for tonight, she said, setting her suitcase down. Alex let out a dry laugh. You and me both. I was supposed to be in Denver 3 hours ago. They stood there in awkward silence for a moment, both clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Finally, Alex cleared his throat. Look, I know this is weird for both of us, but we're both adults and it's just one night. I can sleep on the floor if it makes you more comfortable. Lisa looked at the hardwood floor and then at Alex, who seemed genuinely concerned about making her feel safe. Something about his tone made her relax slightly. The floor looks pretty uncomfortable, she said. We can figure something out. Maybe we can make a pillow wall down the middle or something. Alex smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. A pillow wall. Like kids do at sleepovers. Exactly. Lisa found herself almost smiling back. Ground rules first, though. Absolutely. What do you have in mind? Lisa sat down in the small chair by the window, careful to maintain distance. No funny business, obviously. We stay on our own sides. And maybe we should talk a bit first, so we're not complete strangers sharing a bed. That makes sense. Alex sat on the edge of the bed, as far from her as possible. What do you want to know? Well, for starters, are you some kind of criminal running from the law? Alex laughed, and Lisa was surprised to find it was a nice sound. No, nothing that exciting. I'm a photographer. I travel around taking pictures of small towns and rural communities. It's for a book project I'm working on. That actually sounds pretty interesting. What made you want to do that? Alex's expression grew more serious. I guess I like documenting places that are disappearing. These small towns, they're changing so fast. In 10 years, some of them might not exist anymore. Lisa nodded. There was something passionate about the way he talked about his work that made her curious to know more. But she also noticed a sadness in his eyes that he was trying to hide. What about you? Alex asked. What brings you to Pine Valley? Marketing presentation for a potential client. I work for a firm in Chicago. We help small businesses develop their brand identity. Lisa paused. Or at least I did work for them. I'm actually thinking about starting my own company. That's a big step. What's making you consider it? Lisa hesitated. She hadn't planned on getting personal with this stranger, but something about the quiet intimacy of the small room and the storm outside made normal. Social barriers feel less important. Let's just say I recently realized that the life I thought I wanted wasn't actually making me happy, she said carefully. Alex nodded like he understood exactly what she meant. Sometimes it takes a crisis to make us see what we really need. Outside, the storm was getting stronger. The wind was howling around the building, and Lisa could hear tree branches scraping against the windows. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Looks like we're definitely not going anywhere tonight, Alex said. Lisa looked at this stranger, who would be sharing her sleeping space for the next 8 hours. He seemed harmless enough, even kind, but she was still nervous about the whole situation. I should probably call my assistant and let her know I'm stuck here, she said. Reaching for her phone, as she made her call, she noticed Alex pulling a pillow and blanket from the bed and setting them up on the small love seat by the window. When she hung up, she looked at him questioningly. I changed my mind about the pillow wall, he said. The couch isn't that bad, and you'll sleep better knowing you have the bed to yourself. Lisa felt a wave of gratitude toward this considerate stranger. Are you sure? That couch looks pretty small for someone your height. I've slept in worse places. Trust me. As they settled in for the night, Lisa realized that maybe this unexpected situation wouldn't be as terrible as she'd first thought. Alex seemed like a decent person, and there was something comforting about not being completely alone during the storm. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of a night that would change everything. The storm outside was getting louder by the minute. Lisa lay in the big bed staring at the ceiling and listening to the wind shake the windows. She could hear Alex shifting around on the small couch, probably trying to find a comfortable position that didn't exist. Every few minutes, there would be a loud crack of thunder that made her jump. She wasn't usually afraid of storms, but being in an unfamiliar place with a stranger made everything feel more intense. The old building creaked and groaned with each gust of wind, and she found herself holding her breath during the worst moments. You can't possibly be comfortable over there, she said into the darkness, finally breaking the silence that had stretched between them for the past hour. I'm fine, came Alex's voice, though she could tell he was lying. There was strain in his tone, like he was trying to convince himself as much as her. No, you're not. That couch is meant for decoration, not sleeping. You're going to wake up with a back injury. She heard him let out a small laugh. I've slept in worse places, trust me. Where? On concrete floors? Actually, yes. A few times when I was traveling and couldn't find anywhere else to stay. Lisa turned on her side toward the sound of his voice. Seriously? That sounds terrible. It wasn't great, but you do what you have to do when you're on the road a lot. There was something in his voice that made her curious. Why do you travel so much? I mean, I know you said you're a photographer, but don't most photographers have studios or something? Alex was quiet for a moment. She could hear him shifting again, probably trying to find a position where his legs actually fit on the tiny couch. I like moving around, he said finally. Staying in one place too long makes me restless. Or maybe it makes you nervous, Lisa said gently. Another pause. Maybe. The honesty in that single word surprised her. She had expected him to brush off her observation or change the subject. Instead, he seemed to be actually thinking about it. What are you suggesting? Alex asked. Lisa took a deep breath. She couldn't believe she was about to say this to someone she'd known for less than 6 hours. The bed is huge. We're both adults. We can share it without it being weird. The silence that followed was so long that Lisa started to worry she had completely overstepped. Maybe he thought she was trying to seduce him or something. Maybe she had made him uncomfortable. She was about to take it back when he finally spoke. Are you sure? I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I'm already uncomfortable knowing you're suffering over there when there's plenty of room here. She heard him get up and move around in the dark. The floorboards creaked under his feet as he gathered his pillow and the small blanket Mrs. Patterson had given him. The mattress dipped slightly as he sat on the very edge of the bed as far from her as possible. Thank you, he said quietly. My back was starting to kill me. They both lay there stiffly, keeping to their respective sides of the large bed. Lisa was hyper-aware of every sound Alex made, every small movement. The space between them felt like an ocean, but also somehow charged with electricity. This is weird, isn't it? She said after a few minutes. A little, Alex admitted. But good weird or bad weird? I'm not sure yet. They both lay there listening to the storm. A particularly loud crack of thunder made Lisa gasp and instinctively move closer to the center of the bed. Sorry, she said quickly. Thunder always startles me. Don't apologize. The storm is pretty intense. Are you from around here? Do storms like this happen often? No, I'm from Oregon originally, but I've been traveling through this area for the past few weeks. The locals said this is the worst storm they've had in years. Lucky us, Lisa said with a dry laugh. Maybe it's not about luck. What do you mean? Alex was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Sometimes things happen for a reason, even when they seem random. Lisa thought about that. If someone had told her yesterday that she'd be sharing a bed with a stranger tonight, she would have thought they were crazy. But here she was, and it didn't feel as wrong as it should have. Can't sleep either? She asked, realizing that neither of them had even tried to fall asleep. Too much noise outside, plus this whole day has been surreal. I keep thinking about everything that led me to be stuck in this tiny town. Where were you supposed to be? Alex was quiet for so long that Lisa thought he might have fallen asleep. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, more vulnerable than it had been before. My father's funeral is tomorrow, or was supposed to be tomorrow. I don't know if they'll postpone it or not. Lisa felt her heart sink. Oh my goodness, Alex, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. We weren't close, he said quickly, like he was trying to minimize it. Haven't spoken in years, actually. I wasn't even sure I was going to go until the last minute. But you were going? Yeah. I guess I thought maybe it would give me some kind of closure. Now I don't know if I'll even make it. Lisa could hear the pain in his voice even though he was trying to hide it. Without thinking, she turned on her side to face him, though she could barely make out his outline in the darkness. Do you want to talk about it? Not really what you signed up for when you got stuck with a random roommate. Hey, we're stuck together all night anyway. Might as well make use of the time. Alex let out a sound that was half laugh, half sigh. You sure you want to hear about my family drama? I asked, didn't I? She could feel him thinking, weighing whether to open up to her. The storm outside seemed to make their small room feel even more like a safe haven, separate from the rest of the world. He left when I was 12, Alex finally said. Just packed up one day and moved across the country. Said he needed to find himself or some nonsense like that. Left my mom to raise me and my little sister alone. That must have been really hard. The worst part was that he'd call sometimes, make promises about visiting or having us come stay with him. We'd get excited, pack our bags, and then he'd cancel at the last minute. Always had some excuse. Lisa felt anger rise in her chest on behalf of 12-year-old Alex. She had always been close to her own father, and she couldn't imagine what it would be like to have one who made promises he never kept. What a horrible thing to do to kids. After a while, we stopped believing him. I told myself I didn't care anymore. When he stopped calling altogether, I convinced myself I was relieved. But you weren't. No, I wasn't. I spent years wondering what I did wrong. Why wasn't I worth sticking around for? The pain in his voice was raw and real. Lisa found herself wanting to comfort this man she'd known for only a few hours. There was something about the darkness and the intimacy of their situation that made normal social barriers feel less important. You know it wasn't about you, right? Whatever was broken in him, it had nothing to do with you or your worth. Logically, yes. Emotionally, it's harder to accept. Lisa understood that feeling more than she cared to admit. I know exactly what you mean, yeah? What's your story? Now it was Lisa's turn to hesitate. She wasn't used to opening up to people, especially strangers, but something about Alex's honesty made her want to share. Maybe it was the darkness or the storm, or just the fact that he had been brave enough to be vulnerable first. I just got divorced, she said. Found out my husband was having an affair with his secretary. Very original, right? I'm sorry. How long were you married? 5 years. But looking back, I think I was the only one who was really married, if that makes sense. It does. I gave up so much for him. Changed my career path because he thought my original plans were too risky. Moved to a city I didn't love because it was better for his job. Stopped hanging out with friends he didn't like. Alex shifted slightly and Lisa realized he had turned to face her too. She could feel his attention like warmth in the darkness. That sounds lonely. It was. I became this person I didn't even recognize. Always trying to be perfect, always trying to keep him happy. And it wasn't enough anyway. When did you find out? He asked gently, 3 months ago. I came home early from a business trip and found them together. In our bed. Lisa's voice cracked slightly on the last words. The worst part wasn't even seeing them together. It was realizing that I felt more relief than heartbreak. Relief? Relief that I finally had permission to stop pretending to be happy. Stop trying so hard to make something work that was never going to work. They lay in comfortable silence for a while, both processing what the other had shared. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside their small room, Lisa felt a peace she hadn't experienced in months. The thunder was still rolling overhead, but it seemed less frightening now. Having someone to talk to, someone who understood what it felt like to be disappointed by the people who were supposed to love you, made everything feel more manageable. Can I ask you something? Alex said after a while. Sure. What made you decide to start your own business? That's a big step, especially after a divorce. Lisa smiled in the darkness. Honestly? Spite. I wanted to prove to him and to myself that those dreams he said were too risky were actually worth pursuing. That's a good reason. What about you and your photography? How did you get into that? I started taking pictures when I was a kid. It was a way to escape, I guess. When things got tough at home, I'd grab my camera and just walk around the neighborhood, looking for interesting shots. And now you're documenting small towns. Yeah. There's something about these places that reminds me of being a kid. The simplicity, the way everyone knows everyone, the kind of community I always wished I had. Lisa felt a deep sadness for the boy Alex had been, searching for belonging through his camera lens. Do you think you found it? That sense of community? In pieces, maybe. I spend a lot of time alone, traveling from place to place. Sometimes I wonder if I'm running away from connections instead of looking for them. Why do you think you do that? Alex was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because if you don't let people get close, they can't leave. The honesty of that statement hit Lisa right in the chest. She understood that fear intimately. Her own marriage had failed, partly because she'd been so focused on not being abandoned that she'd lost herself in the process. But doesn't that get lonely? She asked, and terribly lonely, but at least it's predictable. Lisa felt a sudden urge to reach out and touch his hand to offer some comfort, but they were still essentially strangers, and she didn't want to overstep boundaries. Maybe, she said carefully, the right people won't leave even if you let them see who you really are. Maybe, Alex agreed, though she could hear the doubt in his voice. Part 3 by 3 in the morning, the storm had quieted to a gentle rain against the windows. Lisa and Alex had been talking for hours, and somehow the careful distance they had maintained was slowly melting away. Not physically, but emotionally. The walls they had both built around themselves were starting to crumble. I keep thinking about what you said earlier, Lisa said, her voice soft in the darkness, about not letting people get close so they can't leave. What about it? I think I do the opposite. I try so hard to make people stay that I lose myself in the process. Alex turned his head toward her. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, he could just make out her profile. Both ways hurt, don't they? Yeah, they do. There was something different about the way they were talking now. The formal politeness from earlier had completely disappeared. They were speaking to each other like old friends, like people who had known each other for years instead of hours. Can I tell you something that might sound crazy? Lisa asked. After everything we've shared tonight, I don't think anything would sound crazy. Lisa took a deep breath. I feel more like myself right now talking to you than I have in years. And that's terrifying because you're essentially a stranger. It doesn't feel like we're strangers anymore. She was right. Somehow in the span of one evening, they had moved far beyond polite small talk. They had seen each other's pain, their fears, their deepest vulnerabilities. It created a kind of intimacy that was both beautiful and frightening. When I was married, Lisa continued, I was always performing, always being who I thought he wanted me to be. I forgot who I actually was underneath all that. And who are you? The real you? Lisa had to think about that. It had been so long since anyone had asked her that question. I'm someone who takes risks, someone who isn't afraid to fail, someone who believes in second chances and new beginnings. She paused. Someone who's been hiding for way too long. I like her already. Lisa felt tears prick her eyes. Such simple words, but they meant everything. When was the last time someone had accepted her exactly as she was, without trying to change her or mold her into something else? What about you? She asked. Who are you when you're not protecting yourself from getting hurt? Alex was quiet for a long moment. She could almost hear him thinking, considering whether to let her see even deeper into who he really was. I'm someone who wants to belong somewhere, he said finally. Someone who cares deeply about things, maybe too deeply. Someone who's tired of running away. Where would you want to belong? I don't know. Somewhere with people who see me and choose to stay anyway. The vulnerability in his voice broke something open in Lisa's chest. Without thinking, she reached out in the darkness and found his hand. His fingers were warm and slightly rough from handling camera equipment. Alex, she said softly. Yeah? What if we stopped running tonight? What if we just let ourselves be here as we are without all the fear? She felt his fingers tighten around hers. What does that mean? Lisa wasn't entirely sure herself. She only knew that something important was happening between them, something she didn't want to run from or sabotage with overthinking. It means I'm tired of being scared, tired of holding back, tired of pretending I don't need connection with other people. Lisa. Alex's voice was barely a whisper. I know this is crazy. I know we just met, but I feel safer with you right now than I've felt in years. In the darkness, Alex shifted closer to her. She could feel the warmth of his body, could hear his breathing change. The space between them on the bed had somehow shrunk without either of them really noticing. I feel it too, he admitted. This thing between us. I don't understand it, but I feel it. They were both scared. Both had been hurt before. Both had built walls to protect themselves. But there was something about this night, about being stranded together in this small room while the world raged outside, that made those walls seem less important. Lisa turned onto her side fully, facing him. Even in the dim light, she could see that he was looking at her with an expression of wonder and uncertainty. I don't want to hurt you, he said quietly. I don't want to hurt you either. But we might. We might. People usually do hurt each other, even when they don't mean to. So what do we do? Lisa felt a moment of clarity, sharp and bright as lightning. All her life she had been careful, cautious, always thinking about what could go wrong. And where had it gotten her? A failed marriage, a life half-lived, years of playing it safe and still getting hurt anyway. We choose to trust anyway, she said. We choose to be brave. Something shifted in Alex's expression. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Hope, maybe, or just the simple human desire for connection. One night, he said. No promises about tomorrow. No expectations beyond right now. Just us being real with each other. Just us. Lisa felt her heart pounding as Alex moved even closer to her. This wasn't about attraction, though that was certainly present. This was about two lonely people choosing to be vulnerable together, choosing to trust despite their fear. When he reached out to touch her face, his fingers were gentle and careful. When she leaned into that touch, it felt like coming home to a place she'd never. Lisa woke up slowly, aware of warmth and comfort before she was fully conscious. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The bed felt different. The room smelled like lavender and old wood instead of her usual vanilla candle. Then, the events of the night before came flooding back, and she realized she was curled up against Alex's chest, his arm wrapped protectively around her. The morning light was filtering through the lace curtains, soft and golden like honey. Outside, she could hear birds singing their morning songs. The storm had completely passed, leaving behind a peaceful quiet that felt almost magical after the chaos of the night before. Alex was still sleeping, his breathing deep and even. Lisa took a moment to study his face in the morning light, noting details she hadn't been able to see in the darkness. The way his dark hair fell across his forehead in soft waves. The small scar above his left eyebrow that looked old, probably from childhood. The way his eyelashes were longer than seemed fair for a man. He looked younger when he slept, more peaceful than he had seemed the night before. All the walls he kept up during the day had fallen away, leaving just the essence of who he really was. Lisa found herself wanting to memorize this moment, this feeling of perfect contentment. She should probably move away before he woke up, she thought. Give him space, avoid any awkwardness that might come with the morning light. But she found she didn't want to. Being held like this felt too good, too right to give up just yet. When was the last time she had felt this safe with another person? As if sensing her thoughts, Alex stirred and opened his eyes. For a moment, they just looked at each other, both remembering everything that had happened between them. Lisa held her breath, waiting to see regret or awkwardness in his expression. Instead, she saw something that looked like wonder. "Good morning," he said softly, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning." Lisa felt suddenly shy, which was ridiculous, given how open they had been with each other just hours before. But morning light had a way of making everything feel more real, more serious. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months." It was true. Despite everything that had happened, or maybe because of it, she had slept deeply and peacefully. No tossing and turning, no anxious thoughts keeping her awake. Just pure, restful sleep. Alex smiled, and Lisa felt her heart do something funny in her chest. "Me too." They lay there for a few more minutes, neither wanting to break the spell of the morning. The real world felt very far away from this small room with its flowered wallpaper and antique furniture. Here they could pretend that nothing existed beyond these four walls. But eventually, reality began to creep in. Alex would need to try to get to his father's funeral. Lisa would need to catch a flight back to Chicago and face all the decisions waiting for her there. The thought made her stomach clench with something that felt like loss. "I should probably call the airline," Lisa said reluctantly. "See if flights are running today. Yeah, I should check in with my family too, see what's happening with the funeral." But neither of them moved to reach for their phones. The outside world felt like an invasion, and the warmth of the bed, of each other, was too precious to give up. "Alex," Lisa said quietly. "Yeah, last night. It wasn't just because we were stuck together, was it? What happened between us?" Alex was quiet for a moment, and Lisa's heart started to race. Maybe she had misread everything. Maybe in the light of day he was regretting their connection. Maybe she had been foolish to think that what they shared was real. "No," he said finally, and the relief in Lisa's chest was so strong it almost hurt. "It wasn't just that. I've been stuck in plenty of places with plenty of people, and I've never felt anything like what I felt with you." Lisa felt like she could breathe again. "I felt it too, this connection. I've never experienced anything like it." "So what do we do now?" It was the question they both had been avoiding. What happened when their temporary bubble burst and they had to return to their separate lives? Lisa lived in Chicago. Alex traveled constantly. They came from different worlds, had different obligations. How could something that felt so right be so complicated? "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "This is all new territory for me." Alex propped himself up on his elbow, looking down at her with those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. "What if we didn't have to figure it all out right now? What if we just took things one step at a time?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe I don't go to the funeral today. Maybe I stay here one more day, and we see what happens when we're not in crisis mode." Lisa felt a flutter of excitement and terror at the same time. "You would do that?" "I think I need to. Not just for you, for us, but for me. I've spent so many years running away from things that might matter. I don't want to run away from this." Lisa reached up and touched his face, marveling at how natural the gesture felt. His skin was warm and slightly rough with morning stubble. "Are you sure? It's your father's funeral." "He wasn't there for the important moments in my life," Alex said, his voice getting stronger with conviction. "Maybe it's time I started showing up for my own important moments instead." The weight of that decision settled between them. Lisa knew what it meant for Alex to choose to stay, to choose the possibility of something new over the obligation to mourn a relationship that had been broken for years. "I could stay too," she said, the words coming out before she had fully thought them through. "Change my flight. Tell my assistant I'm extending my trip." "Really? Really? I have some vacation days saved up, and honestly, I think I need this. Time away from everything. Time to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to please everyone else." Alex leaned down and kissed her forehead gently, and Lisa felt something inside her chest unfurl like a flower opening to sunlight. "So we're really doing this? Taking a chance on whatever this is? We're really doing this." They spent the morning making phone calls. Alex had a difficult conversation with his sister, explaining that he wasn't going to make it to the funeral. Lisa could hear both sides of the conversation through the thin walls, could hear the hurt and anger in his sister's voice. "You're being selfish," she said. "This is about family." "I know it sounds bad," Alex replied, his voice patient but firm. "But I need to do this for me. I need to choose something that makes me happy for once." There was a long pause. Then his sister's voice, softer now. "Is she worth it, this woman?" Alex looked over at Lisa, who was pretending not to listen while she called her own assistant. "Yeah," he said. "I think she might be." "Dad made his choices," his sister said finally. "Maybe it's time you made yours." Lisa called her assistant and then her lawyer, pushing back meetings and extending her stay. It felt strange and wonderful to put her own needs first for once. She had spent so many years organizing her life around other people's schedules and priorities. "Are you feeling okay?" her assistant asked. "You never take vacation days." "I'm feeling better than I have in a long time," Lisa said. And it was true. By afternoon, they were walking through the small town of Pine Valley, hand in hand, like they had known each other for years instead of less than 24 hours. The storm had washed everything clean, and the air smelled fresh and full of possibilities. The mountains in the distance looked like something from a postcard, all green and purple in the afternoon light. "There's something I want to show you," Alex said, leading her to a small park overlooking the valley below. The view was breathtaking. They could see for miles in every direction, rolling hills dotted with farms and small houses, a river winding through it all like a silver ribbon. It was the kind of view that made you understand why people wrote poetry about nature. Alex pulled out his camera and started taking pictures of the landscape, of the way the light fell across the mountains, of the small town spread out below them. Lisa watched him work, fascinated by the way he seemed to see beauty in everything. His whole demeanor changed when he had a camera in his hands. He became more focused, more present, like he was having a conversation with the world through his lens. "Can I take some pictures of you?" he asked. Lisa usually hated having her picture taken. She was always too aware of how she looked, worried about which angles were flattering, whether she was smiling too much or not enough. But something about the way Alex looked at her made her feel beautiful and worthy of being captured. He photographed her laughing at something he said, looking out over the valley with the wind in her hair, sitting on a park bench with the mountains behind her. With each click of the camera, Lisa felt like he was seeing something in her that she had forgotten existed. "Your turn," she said, taking the camera from him. She had never been much of a photographer, but looking at Alex through the lens, she began to understand what he saw in the world. The way light could transform an ordinary moment into something magical. The way a person's true self could shine through when they felt safe and seen. She took pictures of him pointing out landmarks in the distance, of the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, of his hands as he gestured while telling a story. Through the camera, she could see all the things about him that made her heart race. That evening, they had dinner at a small restaurant that was clearly the town's main gathering place. The walls were covered with photos of local families and old newspaper clippings about high school. 3 days later, Lisa and Alex were still in Pine Valley and neither wanted to leave. They had extended their stay at the bed and breakfast again, much to Mrs. Patterson's delight. The elderly woman had taken them under her wing like they were her own grandchildren, bringing them homemade breakfast each morning and listening to their story with tears in her eyes. "In 50 years of running this place," she told them over coffee on their last morning, "I've never seen two people find each other the way you two have. Don't let the world talk you out of what you know is real." Those words stayed with Lisa as she packed her suitcase slowly, reluctantly. Every item of clothing she folded felt like another step away from the magic they had created in this small town. Back to real life. Back to complications and obligations and all the reasons why falling in love with a stranger in 3 days was supposed to be crazy. Alex was having the same struggle. She could see it in the way he kept finding excuses to delay packing, in the way his camera stayed around his neck even though he wasn't taking pictures. He had filled up 3 memory cards with photos of their time together, of the town, of her, like he was trying to capture every moment before it disappeared. They had spent the past few days exploring every corner of Pine Valley. They had hiked the trails that wound through the mountains, visited the small museum that chronicled the town's history, browsed the antique shops that lined Main Street. They had talked for hours about everything and nothing, sharing stories from their childhoods, their dreams for the future, their fears about taking risks. Each conversation had revealed new layers, new connections. They discovered they both loved old movies and hated horror films. They both preferred coffee to tea, but would choose hot chocolate over either. They both had a tendency to stay up too late reading and had trouble making decisions in restaurants. But more than the surface similarities, they had found something deeper. A way of seeing the world that matched, a rhythm of conversation that felt effortless, a sense of safety with each other that neither had experienced before. On their second night, they had driven to a clearing outside town where you could see the stars without any light pollution. Alex had brought a blanket and they had laid on their backs looking up at the Milky Way stretching across the sky like scattered diamonds. "I used to want to be an astronomer," Lisa had confessed. "Before I got practical and went into business." "What stopped you?" "People kept telling me it wasn't realistic, that there weren't enough jobs, that I'd never make enough money. So I convinced myself I was being silly." Alex had turned on his side to look at her. What if they were wrong? What if being practical isn't always the right choice? It was a question that had been haunting Lisa ever since. What if she had made all her major life decisions based on other people's fears instead of her own dreams? Now, sitting on the bed in their room for what might be the last time, Lisa felt like she was standing at another crossroads. She could go back to Chicago, throw herself into building her consulting business and try to convince herself that these 3 days had been a beautiful interlude but nothing more. Or she could take the biggest risk of her life. "I'm scared," she admitted as they heard the taxi pulling up outside. They had decided to leave together, Alex dropping her at the airport before continuing on to wherever his travels took him next. Of what? That when I get back to Chicago I'll convince myself this was all just a beautiful dream. That I'll go back to being the scared person I was before. Alex took her hands in his, the gesture as natural as breathing now. "Do you trust me?" "Yes, then trust this. Trust what we found together. Don't let fear steal it from you." Lisa nodded, blinking back tears. "What about you? Are you going to be okay dealing with everything at home?" "I think so. For the first time in years, I feel strong enough to face hard things. You did that for me." The taxi honked outside and they both jumped. Time was up. Their goodbye at the airport was tearful but not desperate. They both felt confident that this was a beginning, not an ending. They had exchanged numbers, made plans to visit each other, promised to call every day. But more than that, they had made a promise to themselves to be brave enough to see where this could lead. The flight back to Chicago gave Lisa time to think about everything that had changed. She looked at the pictures Alex had taken of her on his camera, which he had insisted she keep. In those photos, she looked confident, radiant, alive. She looked like the person she wanted to be. The woman in those pictures wasn't afraid to take risks. She wasn't constantly worried about what other people thought. She was someone who trusted her own instincts and went after what she wanted. Back in her apartment, everything looked the same but felt different. The divorce papers on her kitchen table, the business plan she had been too scared to pursue, the life she had been too afraid to fully embrace. All of it felt manageable now, like challenges she could face rather than obstacles that would defeat her. She called her lawyer that afternoon and finalized her divorce. She called 3 potential clients and set up meetings for her new consulting business. She called her sister, whom she hadn't spoken to in months because her ex-husband hadn't liked her. "You sound different," her sister said. "Happier. I'm happier. I met someone. Tell me everything." Over the next few weeks, Lisa and Alex talked every day. Long phone calls that stretched late into the night. Text messages throughout the day. Emails full of photos and stories. The connection they had found in Pine Valley only grew stronger with time and distance. Alex sent her pictures from the road, sharing the complicated process of finally dealing with his father's estate. He had driven to his childhood home and spent time with his sister, working Part 2. The storm outside was getting louder by the minute. Lisa lay in the big bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the wind shake the windows. She could hear Alex shifting around on the small couch, probably trying to find a comfortable position that didn't exist. Every few minutes, there would be a loud crack of thunder that made her jump. She wasn't usually afraid of storms, but being in an unfamiliar place with a stranger made everything feel more intense. The old building creaked and groaned with each gust of wind, and she found herself holding her breath during the worst moments. "You can't possibly be comfortable over there," she said into the darkness, finally breaking the silence that had stretched between them for the past hour. "I'm fine," came Alex's voice, though she could tell he was lying. There was strain in his tone, like he was trying to convince himself as much as her. "No, you're not. That couch is meant for decoration, not sleeping. You're going to wake up with a back injury." She heard him let out a small laugh. "I've slept in worse places, trust me." "Where? On concrete floors?" "Actually, yes. A few times when I was traveling and couldn't find anywhere else to stay." Lisa turned on her side toward the sound of his voice. "Seriously? That sounds terrible. It wasn't great. But you do what you have to do when you're on the road a lot." There was something in his voice that made her curious. "Why do you travel so much? I mean, I know you said you're a photographer, but don't most photographers have studios or something?" Alex was quiet for a moment. She could hear him shifting again, probably trying to find a position where his legs actually fit on the tiny couch. "I like moving around," he said finally. "Staying in one place too long makes me restless." "Or maybe it makes you nervous," Lisa said gently. Another pause. "Maybe." The honesty in that single word surprised her. She had expected him to brush off her observation or change the subject. Instead, he seemed to be actually thinking about it. "What are you suggesting?" Alex asked. Lisa took a deep breath. She couldn't believe she was about to say this to someone she'd known for less than 6 hours. "The bed is huge. We're both adults. We can share it without it being weird." The silence that followed was so long that Lisa started to worry she had completely overstepped. Maybe he thought she was trying to seduce him or something. Maybe she had made him uncomfortable. She was about to take it back when he finally spoke. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. I'm already uncomfortable knowing you're suffering over there when there's plenty of room here." She heard him get up and move around in the dark. The floorboards creaked under his feet as he gathered his pillow and the small blanket Mrs. Patterson had given him. The mattress dipped slightly as he sat on the very edge of the bed as far from her as possible. "Thank you," he said quietly. "My back was starting to kill me." They both lay there stiffly, keeping to their respective sides of the large bed. Lisa was hyper-aware of every sound Alex made, every small movement. The space between them felt like an ocean, but also somehow charged with electricity. "This is weird, isn't it?" she said after a few minutes. "A little," Alex admitted. "But good weird or bad weird?" "I'm not sure yet." They both lay there listening to the storm. A particularly loud crack of thunder made Lisa gasp and instinctively move closer to the center of the bed. "Sorry," she said quickly. "Thunder always startles me. Don't apologize. This storm is pretty intense." "Are you from around here? Do storms like this happen often?" "No, I'm from Oregon originally, but I've been traveling through this area for the past few weeks. The locals said this is the worst storm they've had."